Good morning. Welcome to MotivationU, the podcast. Yes, welcome to MotivationU, the podcast. My name is Bob Ganzak. We're coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the Coach's Podcast Room here at Celebration Point. I'll introduce my guest in a moment. I want to share with you right now that we do have a Dale Carnegie class coming up right away here in Alachua County, here in Gainesville. And you can find out about that class at jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. jacksonville.dalecarnegie.com. We're getting a lot of people in there right now, and we'd love to have you. It's one night a week, starts February 7th, one night a week for 8 weeks. And that's what it is. So we look forward to having you there. And my guest today, somebody that I enjoy talking to all the time. He is the managing partner of Meldon Law, Mr. Carey Meldon.
Bob, thank you for having me here today.
Well, I'm glad you are here. A golf buddy, a friend, somebody that I look up to. Awesome to have you here and share stories about what's going on in the law industry, what's going on at Meldon Law, some things on leadership. And, you know, I was mentioning to you before that Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, I was with the UNF men's tennis team. Mm-hmm. And you're a tennis player.
Yes, used to be.
How long did you play?
I played in juniors in Florida, which was pretty competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Played the state circuit, and then I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to play in Virginia at a school called William & Mary, which was a Division I tennis program. And I played there and realized I wasn't going to become a professional tennis player and turned my attention towards studies. But I probably played competitively for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned you in my talk to the tennis team. I had about 30 minutes. Dr. Olson, who heads the Taylor Institute of Leadership at UNF, he started a program here at UF, and then he left and has built theirs. Incredible job that he's done. He asked me to come and talk to the tennis team,
right,
because he does a lot of interaction with all the sports teams. I've had an opportunity to talk to the basketball team, girls basketball team, women's, I should say, in different. But this was a lot of fun, and I mentioned you there because I remembered your tennis world and how many times we've really talked about competition, how it is to business.
Yes.
And so
yes.
What are some of the things, the ground strokes, see, I've watched tennis once or twice, but what are some of the things that are like, that you learned in tennis that you're able to apply in the business world these days?
Well, first of all, for the audience out there that may not know this, Bob is my personal coach, but a business and life coach now, not a tennis coach. Okay. But Bob has been working with me for many months, I'd say years now, because I've been able to be part of the Dale Carnegie class, which was excellent, both as a student and as an assistant. So I was able to repeat a lot of the knowledge and lessons. And we often talk about our experiences and how our experiences shape our futures and our present, mm-hmm. especially with regards to what we generally talk about, which is leadership. And in tennis, the one thing that always stuck with me, and if you are a tennis player, you probably have heard this before, is that it's 90% mental and 10% physical. It's a very individually based sport. You're there on an island, and you have to be able to deal with.
In the arena there.
You're in the arena and you have to deal with the pressure, mm-hmm. And you're going to win or you're going to lose. And in this day and age, I think sometimes we look at losing as something that's negative, but I truly believe that losing is sometimes the best lesson in learning on how to win and how to be more successful.
I've seen a lot of that in writing lately too, that people are talking about the failure being that stepping stone to success.
Once you understand that failure is okay, then it allows you to embrace being successful, because instead of being afraid of failure, I think you lean towards let's enjoy the successes. And it's something that I struggle with all the time. I think it's an ongoing struggle in terms of the basics and the ground strokes of tennis, and how it how it applies to life. I think a lot of it's just repetition, habit forming, perseverance, understanding that there are rules, right? Like we all abide by rules. We may not like the rules, but you got to abide by them. And there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from playing tennis that I think are easily transferable to real life and how we survive.
And the ball doesn't always bounce the same way every time.
No, and that's great, right?
Even though it's round, and that's what life is.
Hey, if it
you
bounces,
don't always get the same thing every single time.
If it was the same thing every time, it'd get boring after about 3 games.
When you said that you're out there in the spotlight, it's kind of like when you're in court.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have to stand up and talk to the jury or the judge or question somebody, a witness, you're that only person up there. You got the racket in your hand, you're standing in front of the world, and every single eye in that room is on you.
Right.
And
you have to be convincing. You have to be credible. You have to be empathetic. You have to be likable. You have to be entertaining. There's a lot of things that you have to do at one time to be a top-notch trial lawyer, in my mind, especially if you have a difficult case, because generally speaking, you can be an incredible lawyer, but if the case sucks, it's going to be tough to turn it around. But there are a few individuals that I've seen that have been able to overcome incredible odds based upon their skills, their ability to weave tales, and hopefully allow people to see another side of a story which they potentially didn't see initially.
When you mention that, Carey, I think to myself that being book smart and being intelligent aren't always the same thing.
No.
Because you use the word in the law world of entertaining.
Yeah.
And you need to know the law inside and out.
Right.
Yet I'm sure there's a lot of attorneys who have a support staff for them who know more about the law than they do, but their charisma is what carries them into court, and then they're being fed the data. Is that?
Sure. I mean, look, you can read Shakespeare, and that's still entertaining, but to see a Shakespeare play live, you could probably watch it 20, 30 times.
Yep.
Whereas if you read it once or twice, you're probably done. So there is something to be said, especially if it's a long trial, if it's 2 or 3 weeks long. You got to do something to make sure that the people are watching the trial are entertained. Otherwise, they're going to fall asleep. Especially today, as opposed to 100 years ago, when you had attorneys that are well known, such as probably Clarence Darrow is a very, very famous attorney.
Yes.
He was known for being eloquent, but he would go through 3 or 4 days of closing arguments where people would sit there, on the edge of their seats listening to him.
Captured them right in his hand.
But there was also not TVs and social media. There wasn't distractions that there are today. In fact, today the major talent that attorneys should have is the ability to get their point across quickly,
clear, concise,
concise, quickly, and then bolster what they're trying to say so there's no confusion. And that's always hard because you can't put yourself in someone else's head, and you want to make sure they understand what you're trying to convey.
Well, just like public speaking, which we talk about in the Dale Carnegie class, which you went through the program and then you came back through as a graduate assistant, the opportunity or the ability to engage the room is something you can learn. Yet that's important. because we've all been to meetings that we're at the meeting and we're falling asleep.
Right.
Or if somebody's rambling on in a monotone voice.
Yeah.
Those things are difficult,
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I think that's the lessons that you do learn in Dale Carnegie. I mean, I know we talk about a lot of the leadership lessons and the rules that are set forth in the Dale Carnegie class. And I would say probably at least a quarter of them, maybe more, have to do with enthusiasm, with with smiling, with something that anyone can do.
Yep.
Anyone can do,
Yes,
whether you're educated or uneducated, pursuant to schooling or have a medical degree, or if you just have a high school degree. I'd say at least 25% of those rules are just the way that you decide to hold yourself, and that's really interesting because it's uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me, and I speak in front of people for a living. Some of the stuff that we had to do, but after you do it, it's freedom that allows you to understand that you can do it in the future.
It just kind of comes through, and you're able to breathe through it, which is really interesting. And that's the foundation to this podcast, is really talking to people about, I've said it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. You don't have to have a name of Bezos or Musk or to be a great leader.
Yeah.
I mean, some of our best leaders are not even in a position of leadership.
Yep.
Yet they lead from a different spot on their team. You probably have people at the law firm that are great in their department, even though there's probably 2 or 3 or 4 layers of leadership above them.
It's funny you say that. I think it was this morning, I was checking out my social media, and they had a reel that came up, and it was a professional leadership reel. And what it was talking about is more recently, I think in the last 3 or 4 years, especially since COVID, that people are looking more towards their immediate supervisor in their company than they are to the boss, so to speak, or the owner of the company for guidance. And so one of the things that Meldon Law that we have been doing, and I think it was brilliant, I really credit my father because I didn't understand at first, but now I understand, is sending as many people as we can to the Dale Carnegie class so they can all become leaders. And therefore, if
in
you
their
have
own right.
In your own right, and you have a group of leaders. And so if you have someone that's new in like the intake department, they can look up to their immediate intake supervisor, and that person will have the leadership skills to be able to help them through their challenges. And then if you have a team full of leaders, it makes it so the whole pack is stronger and the culture is there to carry on, so that you don't get those people who are the BMWers, is what this author Cy Wakeman calls it, the bitching, good. Moaning, and whining. They call it BMW. Like, no you want people to be positive and focused on how can we help instead of why is it the way it is.
In building a team like you're doing, you've heard it many times. You're only as strong as your weakest point.
Right.
And if somebody like in the intake department or anybody that is, if you hire a new receptionist and they're training the new receptionist, you want that person to treat them the same way that everybody's being treated, so that when they go from department to department, I'm so old now, I can't remember my first day on the job, but there's one thing I do remember is how nervous I was. I didn't know anybody.
Right.
And you're being taken around to introduce to people by somebody in your department, and they're, and you don't know the individuals. Well, in your case, when people come into the company, having everybody going through this program, they're all engaged in the same way, with a smile, use their name, make them feel good. They do it sincerely. It's not fake. It's amazing.
Right. And that's exactly right. I think that it's got to be sincere, it's got to be honest. And I think those are the values that you teach at Dale Carnegie is, sincere, honest appreciation.
And having clients like you that that apply it within their business is, one of the biggest challenges I've felt in my 13 years of doing what I've been doing here is when somebody goes through the program and they send 2, 3, or 4 people through the program, and then you go visit their business, and one of the things I hear is, well, it's never discussed. Lake City Medical Center, HCA Hospital, Lake City, Florida, the hospital up there now, HCA has changed the way they promote it. One of the things that they did, we trained probably 60, 80 people through the Dale Carnegie class, or maybe more. It could have been over 100. And one of the things they would do is start their morning meeting, their morning huddle, by centering on one of the principles. And then they were kind of like, we're all going to apply this throughout this entire hospital today.
That's a great
Think
idea.
of that. Think of that, of how, if you're a patient or if you're a family and these people are coming up to you and, showing that sincere appreciation, and you really just feel good about the way that'll raise those scores, those points that they need to get for their evaluation also.
Yeah.
But, we're talking with managing partner of Meldon Law here in Alachua County offices and in South Florida, in Ocala, in Lake City, here in Gainesville. Am I missing any place?
Fort Lauderdale?
South Florida.
Yeah.
Fort Lauderdale. That was, I kind of incorporated all of that. Miami.
We're all over South Florida. If anybody needs any help, give us a call.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Yep. I always fall back to my marketing days, but this is just a wonderful company to work with. They're the official law firm of the Florida Gators, and you've had a lot of interaction with that, and probably have had a chance to see some challenging in the leadership. Now, you and your dad flew to Nashville this year with the football team.
Yes.
For the Vanderbilt game.
For unfortunately the historic loss to Vanderbilt.
Right. So that's my what was the plane like on the way home? What did you hear from the coach? How did they react to it?
Well, we spoke with Coach Napier and the leadership prior to the game. Everybody was, obviously getting ready for the game,
and
serious.
Optimistic.
I would say everybody had smiles on, and after the loss, it was a more somber environment, like on the buses from the stadium to the airport, and then we got on the charter plane with all the team and the staff, and it was pretty quiet. There wasn't any fighting. You didn't hear any yelling or anything like that, which I think was good. No bickering. Yeah. It was just quiet, and I think that was probably appropriate. I mean, you don't want people celebrating and being overly happy when you have a failure. I don't think you need to necessarily marinate in it too long, but I think in my mind it was an appropriate reaction to losing to a team that they had not lost to, I believe, in 40 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, at least in Nashville.
And when you think about that, Carey, is in the business world we have wins and losses.
Yeah.
And usually it's a short period of time after the loss that you separate. You go home to your family or whatever. And in this case, those young men and those coaches and the entire support staff, they're shelled together for a long period. So it must be difficult for those coaches and for the players to filter those emotions out of them.
I mean, I'm obviously not a football coach. My hope would be is that there's, instead of looking as maybe filtering, as just marinating in it and saying, I don't want to feel this again. Yeah. What are we going to do in the future to not have to feel forward, like this? Yeah. Let's we're all feeling pain. We all don't like this feeling. What can we do to avoid having this feeling in the future? That's what I think the best programs probably do, like Alabama.
Take a look at how they're celebrating over there and how we're feeling let's work to get that emotion back on our side of the field.
Right. And maybe having to face it is the best way instead of just ignoring it, going home and pretending it didn't happen, which is the easiest thing to do, right? When
it is.
When you have a bad day, I've done it before. I just don't, I turn on the TV, I watch, basketball or sports, and I just forget about what happened.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not always the best way to face a difficult situation.
Yeah, avoiding it, I guess, is, yet it's also a way of, like, I like to write or journal after something negative happens. And I don't always write about what the negativity was. Sometimes I do, just to get my brain going in a different direction. I try to do that. We were talking sports, and as you know, I'm a fan and a season ticket holder to the Jaguars. So we've been going through a lot of things lately. And thank you for the nice little words that you
got
share
to
with me in
witness
text messages.
the miracle in Jack's. Huh?
And that's a good point to bring up as of what we were just talking about, because when all of the talking heads and all of the experts on social media and every place else, the one thing that they've talked about is how Doug Peterson, the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, how he was so calm. They're down 27-0. They've had 5 turnovers in the first half.
Right.
And
incredible.
He was just totally calm, never raised his voice, and they've put that into their, it's their organic way of dealing with life now as a football team.
Right.
And we can learn a lot from that in the business world.
Imagine the amount of belief that they have in themselves that they've done that now. I mean, that's like conquering Everest. I mean, once you climbed it, once you come back from 27-0 in a playoff game, you can do anything.
But look how many times they did it. They did it against. They were down 17-0 to Las Vegas, came back.
That's right.
They were down like 17 points to Baltimore and came back. They were down 10, 17 points to the Cowboys and came back. They came back at the very end to beat the Titans. And they've done it like 5 times out of the last 6 games or 7 games.
Right. It's
resilience.
I'm really, really impressed with what's going on there. I think it's going to be a tough feat to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. But you know what? I wouldn't bet against them.
I wouldn't bet. Yep. I wouldn't either.
I'm not going to bet against him.
I'm not. I'm definitely not.
So there's there's
something special that's going on there, and many times I've been in a leadership role in my life for a long time, and if something goes wrong, my old tendency was to attack
the problem.
Yeah. Instead of creating the solution,
that's a good way to put it.
And when we attack the problem, we tend to do it emotionally. And the words that I heard, one of the announcer that goes into the locker room at halftime, Bucky Brooks, he's on the post-game show, and my wife and I we didn't get home until almost 3 o'clock in the morning after the game. By the time we got out of the parking lot, and everything.
Yeah, because you're driving to Valdosta.
Yeah, we were driving back to Valdosta,
and you stayed the entire game.
Yeah.
I know people were pouring out at halftime. I'm sure.
Oh boy, we were there the whole time. But Bucky Brooks said that when you walked into the locker room, because he got to go in there at halftime, it was just serene, calm, businesslike. Coach never raised his voice. He just said, defense, we need to get a couple of stops. Offense, every time we get a stop, we got to score. And that's what they did. They scored, 3 straight possessions. But it was the calmness that everybody in the entire room, nobody was yelling, nobody was screaming, no assistant coach was cussing somebody else out. It was just calm.
Right.
And that's an incredible thing. I know in my past that something goes wrong at the radio station or someplace, boy, Bob was going to go ballistic, Right. But I had to learn how to.
It's funny. You hear these different coaches like Will Muschamp or Kirby Smart or Nick Saban. Those guys breathe fire. And then you've got other coaches, like Tony Dungy or Peterson. And they seem to be more of, I don't know if you would call it quiet leadership, but maybe even keeled. you know?
Yeah.
It's
Well, those college coaches get to recruit the kids. So they're bringing in people, young men, who they feel have the character to be able to withstand their coaching style too.
That's a great point. That's
know,
a very, very great point.
You're building that culture.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 5-star players out there that Nick Saban doesn't knock on their door.
Probably, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so they know what they're getting into. In the business world, it's slightly different, right?
Right.
You have these individuals that, gosh, there's laws and rules and everything. You can't say. I don't know how you can say things to young men that like that Kirby Smart video.
It was a heck of a speech. It fired me up. I was like, I
ready
wish
to go.
he was my coach. So some people respond to it, some people don't.
You got it.
I think it's just you're dealing with the environment and your audience at the time.
Well, we compare a lot of things to sports, and my two favorite teams are Detroit Lions and Jacksonville Jaguars. So I've been down a long time.
Yes.
And now I'm finally starting to rise, but two different styles.
Yeah.
Coach Campbell with Detroit, his players absolutely love him, but they talk about the right character that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And they're not downplaying the people that aren't that way, yet they need to have that right mentality that they want, which is a lot different than Coach Peterson's mentality.
Right.
Which is that soft sell consistency. And I think in leadership, and I'll ask you this, is being consistent is vitally important. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's the most difficult part. And I've thought about that quite a bit, is consistency. It's just tough. It's just tough because you have to hold yourself to that consistency. No one else can do it. It's not something you can't purchase it. You can't just wish it to be true. You just gotta. It's just something that you have to do, and it's something that takes just commitment, internal commitment. It's if you got 4 kids and you got to feed them every day.
Yeah.
You got to bring them to school. You got to make sure they read. You got to make sure they have clothes. You got to make sure they have a roof over their house. You got to do it. You can't just wish it, or say, I'm going to go on the internet and figure out how to do this. You just do it.
You got to do it,
and you do it every day, and you do it without fail, and you do it consistently. And that's kind of that's not a very glamorous part of leadership, but I think it just takes commitment.
Well, one of my best lessons that I learned, and unfortunately it was much later in my life, my son came to work for me. And I always thought, I was a Dale Carnegie graduate and everything else. And so I graduated from class in 1991. And this was probably 2004, 3, 4, 5, in that area, that my son came and worked with me at one of our radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
And he was living at my house at the time. And one day he came up to me and he said, "Dad, you intimidate the people at the radio station." I mean, nobody had ever said I intimidated somebody. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, there's some days you walk in and you don't have a smile on your face, your shoulders are slumped over, you're looking down at the ground, walking through the building. And then there's other days that you come in and you're who you are, you're the guy I see at home, And I said, "Well, who is that person?" And he told me, you got a smile on your face, you're enthusiastic, And those ups and downs confuse the team.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that.
So I had called a staff meeting. I apologized to them. I told them that, I'm really not in a bad mood. I just got a lot of things going on in my mind, and that's the way I think. And so what I did is when I was in those moods, I stayed in my room and shut the door, and it really shifted the way I've been a leader since then. I don't get in those modes anymore. I know that when I walk into the room and there's other people there on my team, it's go time. It's not fake. It's really, I love being there.
You have to be right. You have to be positive, energetic, because you're the one that's creating the energy for the rest of the rooms a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because those are the hard principles. I mean, I know we talk about leadership principles. I have my Carnegie book. I'll pull it out of my jacket. I've been waiting to do this all presentation. I don't know how much time we have left, but
We have a lot.
Okay.
We have 12 minutes to a
Well,
break,
then-
and then we have another half hour.
then we're going to be fine. So
Yeah.
this is the Dale Carnegie Golden Book. If you could see it here, if you enroll in the Dale Carnegie program, you're going to get one of these books.
Yeah.
So, and you can carry it everywhere. I've got actually two of them, one in my car, and then I carry one with me. And there was two of them, two principles under being a leader that I feel are the ones that I try to aspire to because I know they're difficult. One is ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
My favorite.
Yeah, that's Bob's. It's very hard to do. It sounds a lot easier than what it is, you know.
It's a practice that you really have to work on.
Because you have to think about how do you translate the order into a question.
And it's the difference between, and we'll go to your second one in a second one, but it's the difference between telling people what to do or demanding what they do and helping them grow and discover what to do.
Correct.
You can still guide them down, where you need them to go, but it's a lot better than, I need you to do this. How can we get this done in a more timely fashion?
Right.
What are your thoughts?
And it leads.
And then when they give you their idea, then you say something like, well, do you think we could do this? Would that help? Oh, yeah, that would help. Yeah. Okay, do you agree with this? Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's go. Put it into action now. Boom.
Absolutely.
What coaching, to get those people.
It takes more patience.
Oh, it does.
It's a lot easier just to say, just do it and don't I know why it needs to be done. I promise you I'm not wasting your time. Just do it. That's an easier way to do it, but it's probably more effective and a lot less abrasive if you say, how do you feel about maybe going this route?
And it's only seconds. It's not even minutes. It only takes a few more seconds.
Right.
And it's what I always say to when we're leaving, we live in the back of a subdivision that you have to drive forever. And my wife's always like going, go a little faster, go a little faster. And I tell her, Elisa, 2 miles an hour more for the distance we're traveling might get us there 30 seconds quicker.
Right.
And I would rather go the speed limit than get there. It's not going to make a big impact.
It's not going to make a huge impact.
And the same thing as what we were just talking is that it's not going to make a huge impact as far as time for you to do it that way. In the long run, it'll probably make a bigger impact on the growth of that person by doing it that way. What was the other principle that you grabbed out of there?
Well, the other one actually kind of leads from the first one, which is make the other person happy about doing the things you suggest.
One of Mr. Carnegie's favorite principles.
I think it's very difficult. To me, that is if you can master that principle of making the other person happy about doing the things that you suggest, then you have the world at your fingertips because then you don't have to do everything on your own. You have other people that can help you achieve a similar goal. But it's a very, very difficult skill to master.
It's almost like the first 29 principles lead up, when you do all those things, they lead up to being able to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, I look at all the principles, basically how to win people to your way of thinking. That's really the base. That's the base on how to get people to be happy about doing the things you suggest is by implement. It's not just one. It's not a simple arithmetic. You got to.
No, it isn't.
You got to really know how to, and you got to be sincere, and you got to be consistent because people can see through manipulation, and this is not manipulation.
No,
this
it
is
isn't.
This is saying,
they can smell it.
Right. I got a great idea. How do I figure out? I want you to understand how great of an idea it is, or you have a great idea, and I want to share that idea with you, and I want to be as equally as enthusiastic about your idea because I think it's so great. How do we do that with each other, right?
And that word enthusiasm, that's, Mr. Carnegie called it, the little known secret of success. And some of the greatest quotes, I don't know the exact quote, but basically it's from Henry Ford. It's that, enthusiasm is the foundation to success. When you have it, you accomplish things.
Right.
And when you don't have it, it's nothing but alibis and excuses.
Yeah.
That is so true, that enthusiasm. But the two principles, principle number 3 and principle number 30, the one you mentioned, are the two that challenge me all the time. Arousing the other person an eager want, and make the person happy about doing the thing you suggest. You know?
Absolutely. I mean, and honestly, I believe if someone came up with an incredible idea, I would be happier that they would feel like they would want to include me in their idea, and that I would be integral in making their idea successful than it being my idea and me trying to get them to buy into my idea. The fact that they would trust me to say this is my special idea and I want you to be part of it is it's a hard
thing to balance.
It's a hard thing to balance, but I think it has to go both ways.
And you're talking right now, Carey, about great leadership thoughts, because so many of us, when I talked to the team at UNF, I gave them the acronym HOPE, and I told them that hope is not a great strategy in business, sports, or anything. To remember the acronym, and the first one is being humble.
Yeah.
The H stood for humble. And I told them, you're going to have many opportunities in your business life, in your tennis career, to be braggadocious, to pound your chest and make other people feel less than you are. That ability to be humble as a leader is such a vital trait to have, because it's that humbleness that allows you to let them have their own ideas and thoughts, and your teammates to share with the team. Because sometimes we let our egos get in the way, and I don't want to take their idea. Why am I here if they're if they're giving ideas? I heard that from sales managers all the time. And it's not. To be humble and allow those people to have input.
Yeah. I mean, you hear Tom Brady, the left side of the offensive line has a great night when he says, how did you guys score so many touchdowns, or how are you so successful? Man, did you see the left side of our line tonight? They were incredible keeping those guys off me. Focus
isn't on me, it's on other people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I had totally thought about, two of the absolutely greatest quarterbacks of the last 15, 20 years, Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And they're both nearing the end of their careers, and they're both struggling. Yet, Brady stands up and talks about the team and talks about Super Bowls, and Aaron Rodgers stands up and talks about, I think I can win another MVP. It's all about him.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why he has 1 and Tom has 7.
It may be. That's a really good. I've never thought about that.
Because I heard some of Tom's old teammates come out, and after that Aaron Rodgers thing, they've said, "Hey, Aaron, like Gronkowski, one of Brady's best friends and going to be in the Hall of Fame himself." He said, maybe you should start thinking about Super Bowls instead of MVPs.
Right.
Tommy never thinks about MVPs. He only thinks about Super Bowls.
He thinks about Super Bowls, right? Yeah. And that's his. That's a really good point.
And we can incorporate that in the business world too. If you have bonuses and different things within your company and organization, you want to do that. Yet you want to still see the focus on moving the team forward.
Right.
Everybody wants that opportunity.
I think celebrating other people's successes genuinely is a really satisfying thing. If you can let yourself celebrate someone else's successes, that's a real. I think it's better. It's like it's the difference between giving and receiving.
Carey, if that's the only leadership hat you ever wear, is celebrating other people's successes on your team, you're going to be a strong leader. Somebody is a strong leader if they can do that. We've got to be a society these days where we want to tear other people down,
right,
rather than building them up. And even if their successes aren't in line with the things that we value or that we see as success, if they see it, applaud them. Encourage them to do more.
Yeah.
And soon their paths will cross with yours. We're gonna take a break here. We're talking with managing partner of Meldon Law, Carey Meldon, and I've got a couple of other things that I want to dip into in the last part of it. And if you have something to bring up, let me know.
No, you're doing great. I mean, Bob's a great interviewer. I just have to listen to him and things go by very quickly.
We're coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill inside the Coaches Podcast Room here at Celebration Point.
We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back to MotivationU, the podcast, coming to you live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill here at Celebration Point. We're sitting inside the Coaches Podcast Room. And a spot with me today is managing partner of the Meldon Law Firm, Carey Meldon. And Carey, this is the same place that the Meldon Law Firm podcast comes from.
So, exactly right. My father started doing his podcast during COVID. So my father, Jeffrey, is the founder of our law firm. He's been practicing since 1971, and if anyone who knows Jeffrey knows how active he is. And during COVID, when COVID hit, he was going crazy, stir crazy, because he
How do I talk to somebody?
He wanted to talk with someone, and so him and the infamous Freddie Wiebe, who has done incredible work with us, got together and put together the Meldon Law and Friends podcast, and the first episode aired in 2020. And now he's over 100 episodes, I believe.
Wow.
He's never missed a week. So he's in the same room. It started off actually in Freddie Wiebe's old office.
Yep, that's where I started mine. Did it first
Capital City.
2 or 3, yep.
And now it's here in Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, which is an incredible place. It's actually not open for lunch.
No.
But it has
Like
great
4
dinners.
o'clock?
4 o'clock. And I always tell people they are not going to have a bad meal if they come here. So it's got a cool podcast room. So it's worked out perfectly. But yeah, Jeffrey, every Tuesday he has his podcast. So feel free to always watch Meldon Law and Friends. It's been a really fun podcast for him and the guests that are on it.
You've hosted it a couple times too.
Yeah, I step in when needed, but it's his baby. I let him to do the podcast. Plus, he's telling his story, and he's turning. I don't want to give away his age, but he's not getting any younger.
None of us are.
And all of that is an opportunity for him not only to interact with incredible guests, but to memorialize his story as he's lived throughout these many years, including over 50 in Gainesville.
Mm-hmm. I still remember last year for those couple of months when we were at, certain numbers, you and Freddie and me and your dad, double numbers.
Yes, for a moment in time.
4 guys that hang out together so much, and you get 4 guys together that was pretty unique.
Yes.
At that moment. Your dad likes to be on that side and have the guest here, and I like to be on this side and have the guest over there, which is one thing I always notice about the difference of our podcasts.
Yeah, I just sit wherever anyone tells me to sit. I'm pretty versatile, but this podcast room is actually, if you ever come to Spurrier's, you can look in and you can see the podcast room, and it's pretty intimate. I don't know how it comes off on the camera to other people, but it's a really nice intimate space.
And you can rent this space for dinner too. You can come in and rent this and have this because they take the tables out, and you have this round table. It seats 4 in here, very comfortable and a great place. You got the helmets as the background, and it's soundproof.
Yes.
So you hear nothing outside, which is absolutely
So Bob's podcast is, right before lunch. There's no one here. You see an occasional person walking through the hallway, but Jeffrey's is at 4. And they started doing opening on Thursday a few months ago. So the whole bar is full of people because it's on Tuesday. I guess it's on Tuesday they're opening. They have martini specials, so you can see everyone at the bar while the podcast is going on.
But you can't hear them.
But you can't hear them.
That is really neat. That is really
cool.
neat. Going back to leadership, one of the things that you talked about earlier, and I wrote down some notes, is inside your head. We live our whole life inside our heads. Mm-hmm. And think about that for a second. Your thoughts, that voice in your head, is the voice you hear the most. Now, you've been around your dad for your whole life. You work with him.
Yeah.
Still, the voice inside your head is the voice you hear the most.
Yeah.
And when we can, part of leadership is getting that voice to be positive, not only to our team, but to ourselves.
Right. I mean, I think you've mentioned it plenty of times, thoughts, feelings, and actions. They're all somewhat connected, and you have to start with your thoughts, and then they convert to the feelings, and then they can also translate into actions. And the thoughts is where
it starts. Get you your results.
Yeah.
But you can change that thought, you can change your results.
Absolutely.
Which is a key point, and it's probably the toughest thing to do.
Right.
Because those things are ingrained in us over
it's
years.
Reprogramming.
Like in leadership, how you were brought up and the things that people said to you about leadership, not you personally, I'm talking about, globally, how we were brought up and how, our thought process about leadership dictates the type of leader we're going to be sometimes, and some of those are not accurate thoughts.
Yep. Yes. I mean, that you cannot understand. You should probably repeat that because that's something that I have had to learn, and for me, it's something that I continually remind myself is that just because I'm thinking something doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
And you and I have a similar trait is that when somebody of authority says something to us, we trust what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yet, in the world that I live in now, I automatically ask questions.
Yep.
If some leader says to me, "Man, I bashed them in today. I gave them hell," and
How'd you do that?
and then I start thinking in my mind, that might be that individual's insecurity or whatever that they didn't really do it, but they want you to think they did.
Correct. Correct. It's tough because everybody, a lot of it's just coping mechanisms. I mean, people act in a way that allows them to live their daily life because life is tough. I mean, I think for everybody out there, it doesn't matter what position you're in, life is a very, very, it's a beautiful journey, but it's a heart-wrenching journey as well. Every day, you're being challenged and your emotions are being, I think, put at risk.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out ways to cope with them.
And there's
sometimes
little triggers that happen too.
little triggers, but sometimes it's just being, like you said, like, I beat that person's skull in, and like that's the way you're coping with it. Sometimes it's someone saying, we're the best, we can do, it could be because they're trying to cheer the team on. You don't know what another person's motivation or what they're thinking. And that's been really hard for me, I should say, not hard, but it's a challenge for me, is to make sure you give another person a benefit of the doubt, because you never know why they're thinking something or why they're doing it. And the way that you believe they may be doing it may not be the real reason why they're doing it.
Yep.
And that gets in your way.
And we don't have those tough conversations because it gets us out of our comfort zone. And it, to ask them, why do you feel that way, is difficult sometimes, because you're afraid of what the answer is.
Right. Yeah.
And I've talked to leaders that they're afraid to ask their team questions because they're afraid the person will quit. And they're it's a warm body that they need to have around.
I can't underestimate that statement, that it's hard to ask questions when you don't want to know the answers to them. Last night I had a situation. I knew what the question was, but I didn't want to ask it because I didn't want to know the answer. And what do you do, right? Like it's a internal struggle,
and you avoid it, and then it doesn't. You find out that doesn't help anything.
It may not help. I don't know if it helps or not helps if you avoid it. That's the thing, is you can't play Monday morning quarterback.
No.
Life is very challenging. There's no answers. But I've also, through Dale Carnegie, through working with you on our coaching sessions, a lot of this stuff is, in fact, not new, and a lot of us experience the exact same situations, and you can predict future behavior, and there are things that are pretty much, I think, are applicable across the board. And so, although we're all somewhat unique, we're all very similar.
Very similar.
I think I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but I think we're probably more similar than we are unique.
Yeah, that's true.
And so so people have gone through this before. People have professionals have studied it. They have figured out ways on how to deal with challenges.
Right.
And if you're open to reprogramming yourself and changing the way that you think, then there's always that possibility, no matter who you are. I think that.
I agree with you. I was listening to a podcast on the way down here today, and I'll share this story with you. Is they were talking about, how where you're looking for a relationship with somebody, you're always looking for the one.
Right.
And the person that was on the podcast, a clinical psychologist, she was saying that really, statistically, that's basically impossible. There's 7 billion people on the world. You're not going to find the one. But she went into the history of the one, and it started like thousands of years ago when we lived in tribes. And so everybody in your tribe, in your area, and we didn't have electric cars to go from town to town. You had to walk. Everybody in your tribe was your family.
Yes.
So you weren't going to marry within your family or find that individual within your family. You went outside of your tribe, and if you found somebody, that's how the name The One came about. Wow. And she showed statistics that talked about how Disney and Hallmark Channel and all of these social media sites and things have now built that into our psyche of that we say that we have to find the one. Instead of searching for people that have like goals and that can be compatible to our goals.
Absolutely.
So as I was driving down, I shut the podcast off because that really made me start thinking about leadership, and I wanted to get my mind here. And sometimes things evolve. Yeah. We evolve just like the one, from tribes to families and cities. We evolve, and we need to evolve as leadership also.
Yeah.
Because now there's different traits of a great leader. Being humble, goal-oriented, building trust and rather than demanding trust. All of those things.
Absolutely.
So, what is your leadership vision? We have a little over 5 minutes ago. What is your leadership vision? What is your not particularly just to Meldon Law, but as a leader, what is your vision going forward?
That's a really good question, and
That's why I asked.
I know it's a hard answer, right? Like I could make up something on the spot, but it'd probably just be something I'm thinking at the moment.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the best answer would be it's going to evolve.
Yeah.
It's going to change as we go on. I would like, for me, generally where I start is where I feel insecurities. Where do I feel?
Good
Where
point.
where do I feel weaknesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I always want is security, right? So maybe as a leadership principles, I want to create security for others. I want people to look at Meldon Law as not being a job, but a career. I want them
Wow.
to see themselves, at the firm 10, 20, 30 years down the road and know that they'll feel proud about their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that is always humbling, right? Like if we've had employees at Meldon Law that have been there for 20, 30, God, we've had one that's been there for 40 years,
Wow.
Abby, and they've dedicated their entire life, their one life that they have on this planet to help our firm help people. And so that's a pretty humbling thought process in terms of, knowing that there's
Yeah, that
people
is.
that are willing to do that. So my responsibility is to create that security for those people. And that comes with, a lot of hard work and, and a lot of anticipation and
A lot of stress.
A lot of stress, right?
It is.
So leadership, maybe that's one of it. I think another leadership, what I like to see my leadership style to be is one which is genuine, where people genuinely want to believe
And be around you.
and be around you,
Yeah.
and we share core values that it's not contrived, that it's something that's legitimate, and that we're all rowing in the same direction, and we all feel we have this a similar mission, right?
Yep.
And it's hard. I mean, everyone has different motivators. It's not defined in black or white, but I think you have to have some core value meshing to occur in
that's
order for
there.
the
That's the
team,
foundation, right?
for the team to
Yeah.
have to be a true team,
And
right?
lifting those other people up, that is such a huge thing. Somebody once told me that, and it's stuck with me for the last 40 years, is that in leadership you want to get to the point where you're pulling the rope, not pushing it.
Yeah.
Because when you take a piece of rope, take 3 feet of rope, put it on the ground and try to push it, it goes all different ways.
Right.
But if you take it and you pull it,
Yeah.
it just slides right along behind you.
That's a great point. I like
And-
that. Very good imagery. Yeah.
And building that with your team so that people come to work every day feeling like, wow, we're all working together, pulling that rope. There's going to be days that you're going to have to push the rope, and it's going to be frustrating. As long as you all recognize that, and say, hey, tomorrow's going to be a better day, and we're going to move and start pulling
Isn't
that
that
rope
hard?
again.
Like to inspire hope is something that everyone should aspire to. It's a very, very difficult challenge to inspire hope in others, but those that can do it can conquer anything.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true. That's true.
So.
And so, as we wrap up here today, I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your ideas.
Always a pleasure, Bob. Anytime you want me on, I'm happy to. I love talking with you, and the fact that we get to do it and actually have people.
An audience.
An audience is even better.
Because this is just like our meetings are.
This is you're
pretty
pretty much getting a glimpse into the office meetings that we have, and they're always fulfilling and fun. And I walk out and I say, okay, there's something that I need to work on to become a better leader and to do a better service for the people that we serve, both our employees and our clients.
Quickly, we have a little over a minute here. What are some of the events coming up here locally with your connection with UF that?
I appreciate that. So obviously, we're the injury law firm of the Florida Gators. So we have a really great connection with the University of Florida. This spring, there's been some really, really great events that we've already given out free tickets to. They include gymnastics, which are always a sellout, women's basketball, which has been really, really good this year, men's basketball, which is coming on strong. There's going to be softball and baseball. If you go to our social media pages, the Meldon Law Facebook page, you can see how to enter to get those free tickets. We also usually give away some free gift certificates to Spurrier's and our Harry's, so people can go and grab some free dinner and do dinner and a date and go to see an event. Usually in the spring, it's really easy because these events are quick. They take a couple hours. You can get in and you get out. So that's the gist of it.
Baseball team's ranked 7th in the country.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to. I'm going to make a couple of games this year.
Come on down.
Thank you very much.
All right.
You've been listening to Motivation U, the podcast here from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and we'll see you again next Thursday, 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Bob.